What is up, guys, and welcome to yet another deck profile. 2 in a row? Crazy, right? Anyways, this is not one of my decks. This is an actual good player's deck, and we have Zach back on the channel. How you doing, bud?
I mean, I think calling me a good player is stretching it a little bit.
I mean, you got, what, 6 out of 40 something?
It was 6 out of 56.
56, and this wasn't a regional or anything. This was the sneak peek event at your locals, yeah. So you went kind of hard here. So we can see the deck list in front of us, but go ahead and just tell the viewers what you played, what you call this, you know?
Yeah. So I'm just gonna talk about the locals because it definitely isn't the most competitive scene. Like it was a locals. People came there for the sneak peek, and they just got free entry into the locals by doing the sneak peek. So a lot of people stayed, and that's why we had 56, which is more than they get at the box tournaments. But anyways, we had 6 rounds. I went 4-1-1. I should have been 5-1, but that was just I misplayed, my bad. I played against D-Link, Dino, Manadium, this weird Nemorelia Testina build, and I was like, how is this here? Because at this point, he had won 2 games and lost 1, the same record as me. And I was like, how did Testina and Nemorelia do that? And then I realized that Nemorelia just searches a quick effect Dark Ruler, but I still 2-0'd him. And then I played against this Albaz deck, which was really weird. It had branded, it had Chimera cards, it had a Dogmatica Albazoa thingy, as well as Bestials. So basically all of the Albaz lore except for Sword Soul.
Okay.
And then I also faced against a Dynamorphia Labyrinth player.
Oh, that sounds like a toxic deck. But
I 2-0'd him.
Yeah, but you weathered all of that with Synchron. So this is one of your favorite decks, if not your favorite deck, right?
Oh, this straight up is my favorite deck.
Right, okay.
I have played Synchron for a very long time, even before. So a little history on me. I quit during Master Rule 4.
As you should have.
Just because I did not want to buy links to be able to play Synchro stuff. So I was playing Synchro stuff up until Master Rule 4 came out, and then I just was like, nah. Then I came back in, and the first deck I picked up was Synchron again. So I really love the deck. I've been playing it for basically my entire Yu-Gi-Oh life, and with the new support, it's just a very, very strong deck right now. Stuff like the new generic synchros like Dispotter, Crimson Dragon, as well as just the other synchrons such as Assault and Rev Synchron. Just the ability to, at least in my version of the deck, play 18 non-engine flex spots is insane.
That sounds pretty good, yeah. So let's go ahead and get into the card by card. 42 cards in the main deck. So first up, we have Stardust Synchron. There's going to be a lot of cards with that last word in it, but yeah, so go ahead and tell us about this card.
So this has multiple effects on it. You're going to be using every single one during your turn, as long as you get to it. It has the ability to tribute 1 monster for cost on your side of the field, and then special summon the card, and that's from hand or graveyard. And then on summon, you can add 1 spell trap from your deck that mentions Stardust Dragon, which we'll get to what it searches in a little bit, but this is a soft brick. You don't want to see it in your opening hand, but you can definitely deal with it in your hands. You just have to modify your combo lines and change things up. This is a very hard deck, so knowing the combo lines, knowing how to shift it on the fly is very important.
Yeah,
If you don't want to learn the lines, you can play this at 3.
Yeah, so this is what we call a fishbowl deck in Yu-Gi-Oh, where there is no correct answer. There's no one hard line. You're trying to get to the same end board through possibly hundreds of different routes depending on your opening hand.
So that's Stardust Synchron. The next card is Rev Synchron.
Which
This card is insane. We're seeing play in so many decks. It's really good in Adventure Synchron, but you can play this without it. But if you are going to play it without it, I suggest playing the pure version of the deck. And I can talk about the changes in a little bit about between the adventure and the pure version. But REV Synchron just can synchro summon from hand, which is just nuts. You can there's some version of Adventure Synchron that are playing Reborn Tengu, so you can normal Tengu and then synchro summon into Shooting Riser Dragon, and then it just starts your whole combo that way, because REV Synchron can synchro from hand. And then also, that you don't normally use that effect. That's just a if you have to.
It's just a
deal.
benefit. It's just a benefit that's a code talker monster for synchros.
Oh yeah. The effect that you're going to be using more often is if you control a level 7 or higher synchro monster. While this card's in the graveyard, you can just gub it back. So send the top card and special summon it as a level 1 tuner.
Oh crap! I didn't even realize it was gub. I thought it summoned itself back just once per turn. Oh, it's once. Okay, it is once per duel. So it's once per duel. So not that crazy, but still.
Still pretty good.
Still pretty crazy. All right, next up we have a Helki Fibrax staple, Jet Synchron, but we are playing 3 copies here. Care to elaborate?
I literally had someone just go. He doesn't have Jet in his hand, because I was gonna attempt to special it from deck. He's just like, he doesn't have it in hand. I'm gonna Ash this. And then I normal summon Jet, and he's like, isn't this limited? I was like, no, it's at 3. So this card, very good. It has 2 effects. In the pure version, you're gonna be you might occasionally use one of the effects, which is just when it's sent to the graveyard as sync material, you can add a junk monster from deck to hand. The other effect is if this card's in the graveyard, you can send one card from your hand to the graveyard to special summon it, but banish it when it leaves the field. And importantly, you can only use one of these effects per turn. So if you use the first effect in pure, you cannot use the second effect. Yeah. And that's why the pure version can get a little bit more difficult in terms of its combo lines. But we're basically just using it for the second effect, which is just you get another level 1 tuner.
Yeah. So up next we have the card that everybody thought was going to be a $65 staple, Assault Synchron, which
I mean, it's still like $10. So
it's 4, my guy. It's $4. Really? Yes, because I was thinking about picking up a playset of these when I saw they were $4.
Oh, all right.
So yeah, maybe pick them up now. But anyway.
Yeah, you can special it from hand, but you take 700 damage. It's a 1 of. You don't really want to see it, but as a 1 of, it's not a brick because it can special summon itself. You're mainly just summoning this off of Doppel. It does have another effect that people just don't realize, and that's that if a dragon synchro monster you control is tributed or banished, except during the damage step, you can banish this card for cost, and target one of the monsters that was tributed, the dragon synchro monsters that was tributed, and then special summon it back.
Oh my!
So this allows you to extend.
Okay, we talked about this a little bit before we started recording. I already know where this is going, and I hate it. It's awesome, but I hate it. Anyways, all right, let's continue. Stardust Trail, the pretty lady that doesn't at all look like Akiza with a dragon tail. Anyway, tell us about this card.
I didn't know she had a tail until now. She is like the only brick in the deck, but you can still do stuff with her in hand because she is just a level 4 non-tuner, and this deck struggles for non-tuners. So being able to use this plus a Jet Synchron or a Rev Synchron summoning it back it just gets you to full combo anyways. So while it is a brick, you can still do stuff with it if you draw it. Like in the last round against the Dynamorphia Labyrinth deck, I drew it and I still was able to end on, I think, 2 Omni Negates plus 2 hand rips plus a monster negate.
Seems pretty good.
Yeah, for opening the brick, it's pretty decent.
So, going up next, we just have a full adventure package. So, the Wandering Griffin Rider, the 3 Water Enchanters to the Temple, and then, there's the rest of the adventure engine there. But not much to talk about here except for the fact that you actually use Water Enchantress is effect to summon itself, so you can use it as synchro material, I believe. So
Yep, we are only using, so we get to use two of its three effects instead of one of its three like everyone else does.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, you use both Griffin Rider and Enchantress to as synchro material. The whole goal of this deck is just to end on an Omni before you get to Speeder. So if you open Rev Synchron, then you add Rider, sync those off into Baron, and then Rev Synchron back, sync with the token, and then go into Speeder. If you
That's so
open
clean.
Jet, then you search Enchantress, summon Enchantress, sync into Herald, activate Enchantress to add back the right, and then you pitch the right for Jet, sync into Speeder with
The
the token.
That's so clean. That's so awesome. Like, that's just such a clean line. Anyway, up next we have two Kashtira Fenrir. Any reason why two?
I would play the third if I was playing a bigger, like a more intense version of the deck, because there are like 60 card versions of this deck, but I personally want to keep it as close to 40 as possible. 42 is optimal with the bricks that it has. It just helps for consistency, so you don't see stuff like Trail as often. Fenrir is just a good card. It's not necessary for your full combo. In fact, you don't really want to have it on board because it makes the combo lines a little bit more funky and you have to actually think, and we don't like that. But if you open this plus like Rev Synchron or Jet, you can still end on, in the case of Rev Synchron, a Baron if you don't open combo. Or if you open this plus Jet, then you can end on an Omega, or you can sync into an Omega, hand rip for one, then special summon it, the other Fenrir, which is also like all right.
That seems pretty good. Anyway, let's go on to hand traps. So we have 3 Ash, 3 DD Crow, and 2 Droll and Lockbird. So Droll and Lockbird is still sticking around from last format, but DD Crow, any reason why this?
This card's insane. I don't think people understand how crazy this card is. Hits Pearly, like if they go Per Lily targeting Engrave, you just crow it away. Can't do that with Visteals. People forget that.
Yep.
Also against Unchained, just banish the blue dog preemptively. Can't do anything there. And then it also is just weirdly good against a ton of other things. Like you can crow away stuff, like when I was against Dragon Link, just crow away the targets for their Visteals, and then it hinders their combo a little bit.
Yeah.
As well as just doing, it's just so good. The graveyard is this format. Everything is either in the graveyard or in the hand effect. So stuff like Veiler is not quite as good. Stuff like Impermanent and Veiler is not quite as good. And there's also Vanquish Soul, which can just dodge targeting, but they can't dodge targeting in the grave.
Yeah.
So Crow is still very, very good. You can hit a Ryza or Raisin in the grave if they're trying to summon it back or bring it back to hand with Rock. It's just a solid card.
Interesting. All right, and then up next we have 2 copies of a card that is a hand trap, although not many people know it. Saravis, the Ancient and Ascendant. So this card is cool. I always like this card, but go ahead and tell us about it.
Yeah, so it outs targeting effects. One of the main ways that people try to interact with Speeder is with targeting, stuff like Imperm, Veiler, and even Mourner. This just says no, you can't do that. Plus, it's searchable off of Herald. So,
yeah, I thought about playing this as a one-of in Fluffle when we were running the Fluffle was running the Illusion of Chaos packages. So Magician Soul, Send Vendor. If you already had that in hand and you draw a pre-preparation of rights, you would just add this instead for protection. But anyway, so up next we have 3 Rite of Seer, 1 Faithful Adventure, and 1 Draco Back the Rideable Dragon. Just more stuff for the adventure package. The one of Foolish Burial, I can imagine what you're sending, but go ahead and tell us what you're sending off Foolish.
Foolish is just a good card. You play this in Pure as well, because your graveyard is your king. Like if you could just send a Jet Synchron, because you're not realistically going to be sending Rev, because you have the requirement of needing a level 7 or higher Synchro. But like you can send Jet if you already have access to what you're most likely going to be sending, which is Enchantress. Just send Enchantress Engrave effect to banish, search for right, and then your combo's off. This is it's a 4th copy of Enchantress, and it's also just consistency.
Yeah. fair enough. So up next we have Synchro Overtake. This was, I believe, an ultra rare from Dama that people
I
hated.
think it was a secret.
Was it a secret? I don't even
I
remember.
think it was a secret.
It might have been. But anyway, go ahead and tell us about this card.
Yeah, you reveal one synchro monster from your extra deck, which in this case is going to be Jet Warrior. That mentions a
that has a material that's
that has synchro material. So yeah, you just summon out Jet Synchron. That's what it does.
Yeah.
You can special summon it from deck or graveyard,
which is
nice. Yeah, and it was a secret in Dawn of Majesty.
Okay. Okay, yeah, that explains why people hated it so much. But anyway, yeah, so only one per turn. One thing I'm noticing, well, I guess we'll talk about the next card first, but so we have Stardust Illumination. I assume this is the pickup off of Stardust Synchron.
Yeah, that's what it's here for. It has two effects. You're going to aim for the second effect, it has one effect, but it can change based off of whether or not you have Stardust Dragon or a card that mentions it, or Synchro Monster that mentions it. If you have a Synchro Monster that mentions it, you can special summon the trail. If you don't, you just Foolish Burial. And then it does have another effect in Grave where you can banish it, target one Stardust monster you control, and either increase or decrease its level by 1. This has applications outside of just Stardust Trail and Stardust Synchron. You can also modulate Stardust Dragon, which we are playing, as well as XL Synchro Stardust Dragon and Stardust Charge Warrior. So there's multiple targets in the X.
Yeah, so I guess the one card that I see we're not playing that I assume we do play in the pure version is On Your Mark, Get Set, Duel, which is just a cool card from Maze of Memories.
Yeah, for that version of the deck, you really need to be playing. So the pure version of the deck plays a lot more twos because it relies on Junk Synchron a lot more, but you can't use Junk Synchron because it requires your normal summon. It is on normal summon, you target one level 2 or lower monster in your graveyard, special summon it back. You can't do that if you're accessing the adventure stuff. And On Your Marks, Get Set, Duel is basically just there to get out Synchron Carrier and other stuff like that. It's a consistency tool, but you don't necessarily need that in this version because you have so much good stuff packed in here. It's just this deck is so packed with power that you don't need the consistency tools that Pure does.
Yeah, and I can see that with our next card, Crossout Designator, because you obviously Droll and Lockbird does really hurt this deck. Stopping an Ash Blossom is always nice. Stopping an Imperm, which we also have in here, DD Crow. I mean, just being able to shut off those forms of interaction that do really hurt this deck is so important.
Yeah, and also post side, I always put in evenly matched, and a D barrier from going second, as well as a nib if I'm going first, just to make sure that
just to be safe, yeah,
they can't interact with me.
Gotcha.
And I can go off, and then they lose.
Yeah, so we have the two imperm that we mentioned, and the other one of is the Called by the Grave. So that is a tight 42 card list. Tight in the sense of cool. This is not hurting for non-engine at all, as we can see. So I guess let's go ahead and get on into the extra deck. So first card we have here is Jet Warrior. Now this is a solo print from a structure deck, I believe.
Yep.
And I don't think it's gotten too terribly expensive, but
it's $2.
Yeah, if you're thinking about playing this deck, you should probably pick this up now.
Yeah.
But yeah, go ahead and talk through the effect.
This card is just amazing. Not only does it turn on Synchro Overtake, but I have gone into this on multiple occasions because it has a good effect. If it's Synchro summoned, you can target one card your opponent controls and return it to the hand. So
it's just
essentially
compulse.
It's another Draco back. Like
and it's card. It's not just monsters. You could out like floodgates if you really wanted.
To a certain extent, yeah. You can't out stuff like
you can't out skill drain. It'd be difficult to out something like what is it, like a Gozen match?
Tikaboo.
It might be, or Tikaboo. Yeah, it might be hard to out it, but you still can. So that's really cool. And then the other effect is if this card is in your graveyard, tribute one level 2 or lower monster, special summon this card in defense position, but banish it when it leaves the field.
Yep. So you can on the crackback Jet Synchron, and then activate Jet Warrior, or Jet Synchron and Grave, summon it back, and then Jet Warrior, get rid of that, and then summon out Jet Synchron, and then you can
Also,
Synchro Climb.
yeah, also importantly, you can also pop stuff like the Excel or the revived Rev because it's a level 1 when it revives itself. So that's really there's a lot of ways you could get it back.
Or a
And then
Crow,
yeah, you can
or
always yeah you
or
could just normal summon a crow or a droll
a
mockbird if you really needed. Yeah. So up next we have the Crimson Dragon, which is it's good in a lot of decks, but it's especially good in this deck.
Yeah, this card's insane. A lot of people are using this to do the Calamity Lock,
Mhm,
but that requires 2 extra deck slots, and I just don't think that's necessary. Because if you're able to full combo, you essentially have won already.
mhm.
Like, as long as you play well and you use your negates well, you just win anyways. And without the you don't need to do that the hot red lock, and without that you can end on 2 extra sets of interruptions. Um, and it's just a good card. If you don't know what it does, you can. It has a first effect, which is to add a spell trap that mentions Crimson Dragon. We're not using that. There are some versions that are, but I don't think you need to. I don't want to add extra bricks, so I'm not.
Fair enough.
And then quick effect, you can target one level 7 or higher synchro monster, except Crimson Dragon, and special summon one dragon synchro monster from your extra deck. And our extra deck is loaded with good stuff dragons.
Yeah, yeah, it
So there's
is.
plenty of options.
Speaking of which, we have probably the card that everyone sees in this in the thumbnail of this video, Majestic Star Dragon, the original like Super Yusei boss monster Turbo Extreme.
Yeah. So this is an Omni that wipes the board. Need I say more? It's very, very powerful. If you can bring this out against back row decks, like I played against Dynamorphia multiple times, and every single time I do, if I just turbo this out, then they just essentially lose because I can just negate whatever they'd have and then just wipe their entire board. And I make sure that I don't use this until they commit. And once they commit, then they're essentially cooked.
Yeah. Also, let's not just ignore the stat line on this motherfucker. I mean,
Oh, he big.
3,800 is
He
so
big.
massive. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, this is never a deck that struggles for damage unless it is bricked really hard. But still, just 3,800 is so huge. Anyway, up next we have
Oh,
Bestial Dispotter. Oh, is there something else you want to say?
really important about Majestic Star Dragon. It does have a mandatory effect in the end phase. So it's a use it or lose it negate. The mandatory effect is to send itself back to the extra deck and summon a Stardust Dragon from your graveyard.
And it does have to be the actual Stardust Dragon since the name is in
Yes, it
quotes.
has
Yep.
to be Stardust Dragon.
Yep. So up next we do have the Bestial Dispotter. Great card. Wish I had one, but we'll
Yeah, I
go.
pulled this. Only reason why I have it.
Fair enough. Yeah.
It's just a solid card. Just multiple varied forms of interaction. Like I remember against the Albaz Good Stuff deck, um, I was on Dispotter and he tried to activate Fleur from hand, and I just was like, okay, there's no monsters in your banish zone, but there's stuff in mine. I can still just destroy it, and then it won't hit the field.
This card is so useful. Anyway,
Yeah. If you guys don't know what this does, as a slow effect, you can target one banished monster, and special summon it back to your special summon it to your side of the field. Most of the time, that's Omega, so you can hand rip for 2. And then on a quick, when a monster effect is activated, you can target one banished card, shuffle it into the deck, and if you shuffled back one of your cards or shuffled it back into your deck, then it's a pop. If you shuffle it into your opponent's deck, it's a negate.
yeah. So just such a strong card. Such a strong card. Up next we have the Baron de Fleur. Everybody should know what this card does already, but if you don't, once per turn, target a card on the field, destroy it. Once while this card is face up on field, that is a soft. It's a soft once per turn, but it's a once per turn per copy. So and that's not a one. I guess it's not once per turn. It's just a soft once, I guess. It's a quick effect Omni Negate, and then the effect that you have the pleasure of using and abusing is once per turn during the standby phase, you target a level 9 or lower monster in your graveyard, return this card to the extra deck, and special summon the monster you targeted, which is pretty crazy for this deck.
Yep, I have summoned back Stardust Dragon before, and it has won me the game.
Speaking of which, we do have the Stardust Dragon. So this does feel like a little bit of a requirement to play, just because of the way the deck is built. However, it's not really the worst requirement compared to the Blackwing deck I uploaded earlier this week, where you do have to play the one of Blackwing Dragon. Stardust is significantly better.
Yeah, and you're never gonna like hard make this. You're just gonna use it with
Cheat it out
ASSD's
with,
effect.
yeah, with the ass dragon. Anyways, up next, we have the one of Psyframe Lord Omega. You kind of alluded to it, but this card hand rips, and it hand rips very well. The reason it's at
It
one
does
is
more
because
than that
it's
too.
yeah. The reason that this is at one is because it doesn't. It's not a once per turn effect, and this deck can use it multiple times, but it also has a second effect.
It has 3 effects actually.
Uh,
So everyone knows the during the main phase quick effect, you can banish both this face-up card from the field and one random card from your opponent's hand until your next standby phase. And I'm pretty sure the ruling is still where, because you are usually summoning this out, using its effect, and then Dispotter targeting it, summoning it back, your opponent will not get the first card that was banished. I believe that's still the ruling right now.
that
But don't hold me to that.
Yeah, that's one I'd have to check. I'm not sure about that. I could see why because it's set.
Has to summon itself back as
Yeah,
well.
return one face. Banish this card from your field one until your next standby phase. Yeah, that's a
It's
really
weird. It's a ask your head judge type of deal.
that is definitely ask your head judge by the type of deal. But the other effects are
Yeah, so during your opponent's standby phase, you can target one banished card, return it to the graveyard. So in the grind game, after you've already activated Omega's effect the previous turn, you bring it back.
mhm,
Sometimes it's correct to just sit on it, and then during your standby phase, bring back like a trail or something. Oh yeah, Trail can. I forgot to mention this earlier. Trail, when a card on your side of the field is tributed, you can special summon it from hand or graveyard, and it has another effect where if you used it as synchro material for a warrior, synchron or stardust, you can special a level 1 token.
yeah.
So it's just a very good card. But yeah, you can sometimes bring that back so you can get more triggers off of the tribute effect, as well as also just bringing back like assault synchron or something else like that. It's just important. And then the third effect is if it does manage to get destroyed, you can return, or you can,
You can
as a
turn it.
slow on your turn,
Yeah,
you can target one other card in the graveyard. This can be either player's graveyard. Shuffle both into the deck. Um, that's just it.
yeah,
It helps you to recur.
yeah.
In the
So
grind game, this card's insane.
yeah. So just really strong card, and you can see why it's at one.
Oh, I
Up
think it should be banned. Like this card is too strong, and I
Interesting.
play it.
Interesting. All right. So up next we have the Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon. So I know this card from Virtual World where you cheated out with Ultimate Zulkin, but this deck can just hard make it.
Yeah, if you're going into the jet plus right line, you hard make it. But if you're going for the Rev plus Wandering Rider line, then usually, with my version of the deck, where I'm not just turn skipping my opponent, I'm cheating it out with Crimson Dragon on my turn, then making a second Crimson Dragon to cheat out the Majestic Star Dragon on my opponent's turn.
Interesting. Interesting. All right, so up next we have the Ass Dragon, the ASS Dragon. Yep, the Accel Synchro Stardust Dragon. So this card, for those of you who haven't played against Super Heavy Samurai pre Scarecrow ban, this card is very strong. But go ahead and just walk us through what you use it for, because we all use it for Baron, but there's probably some other
We
things you
use
can
it
do.
for everything.
Yeah, there's probably some other
Um,
things you can do in this deck.
yeah, so On summon, it can summon back a level 1 or level 2 or lower tuner. Usually you're not summoning back the Assault Synchron, you're just summoning back the Jet so that you can use it later to summon or to synchro summon into other stuff into a 5.
Mhm.
Because if you go back to Stardust Illumination,
Mhm.
it can special summon if you control Stardust Dragon or a synchro monster that mentions it. This card specifically mentions Stardust Dragon because on Quick during the main phase, contribute this card, special summon one Stardust Dragon from your extra deck, then Quick Synchro, and then the cards that were synchro summoned using this effect are unaffected, just straight up unaffected by activated effects.
Yeah, so they basically just become a full armor master, which is pretty strong. Uh,
Yeah, there are lines where you can use ASSD to go into Speeder so that they just cannot interact with Speeder. I don't personally
that's
like those lines, but you can still do it. And notably, this tributes. So what you usually do is you tribute this, and then you go Chainlink 1 Assault Synchron, Chainlink 2 Trail, because a Dragon Synchro was tributed on your side of the field, so you can just special back Assault or ASSD, and then you can summon back another level 4 non-tuner to climb more.
oh my god.
Also, its stat line is really important. This plus Stardust just makes Crimson really easily. That's how you get to double Crimson during your turn, is simply using Excel Sync or Stardust Dragon.
That's insane. See, like I didn't even think about that because like when you were talking about the assault synchron like secret effect, I thought you were talking about majestic star dragon, like bringing it, like you tribute it to negate the activation and destroy, and then you could just bring it back so you have a second omni negate, which I'm sure you do. But it's like this deck is so layered, and you can definitely see where some of the complexity comes from, with just all these different effects that you have to manage and remember. So don't play this deck lightly. But anyway,
Oh, this if you need to sit down and really dedicate yourself to this deck. The only reason why I've been able to do so well is because I've been playing this for a very long time. Like
yeah,
before um most of this most of the cards in this deck were here. It was just like Doppel plus Junk Synchron Turbo.
yeah. So yeah, so this is definitely a hard deck to play. But let's keep going with the extracts. So we have the weirdest limit I've ever seen, which is shooting Riser Dragon. I did actually play when this card got limited, so let's talk about
That
this
was a
card.
very strange time.
Yeah, let's go ahead and talk about this
So
card.
this comes up in some weird combo lines. When it's synchro summon, you can send one monster from your deck to the graveyard whose level is lower than this card, and then reduce this card's level by that. So normally, it's just it just helps you in weird combo lines to synchro climb,
Yeah.
and that's really all you use it for. Um, Also, once per chain during your opponent's main phase, you can synchro summon. So it can quick synchro, but you're not usually going to be using that because you don't have a way to realistically get to anything with this. Like maybe if you have a Crow on field or you have a leftover token from Trail, you can quick synchro into an Omega, but
Hmm.
that's about it.
Gotcha. So up next we have the Stardust Charge Warrior. Really simple effect. When it's Synchro Summon, draw a card, and then can attack all special summon monsters once each. Usually doesn't come up, but it's just a really good synchro laddering tool because it does go net neutral on its summon. So
Yep.
uh,
I
speak
mean, yeah, it gives you more advantage. It's a good card.
speaking of advantage, TG Hyper Librarian. This is the card with the least text in this deck. And for those of you who haven't played Yu-Gi-Oh for a long time, the less text a card has, the scarier it can become. So
I mean,
this
we've all read Pot of Greed, right?
Yep. So this card, just if it's synchro summoned, or if a monster is synchro
Mandatory
summoned,
effect.
you just draw a card. Yeah,
Mandatory.
you have to draw a card. And that's in general. So if your opponent synchro summons a card, you draw a card. This card does have to be face up on the field to activate and resolve. So like if you go synchro summon a monster, they go like let's say you go junk speeder, whatever, you summon a monster, chainlink 1 that monster, chainlink 2 hyper librarian. If they chainlink 3 ghost ogre it, you won't get the draw. But
Yep. And
big
one of
deal.
the really fun interactions with this is if you have Librarian on the field as well as ASSD.
Hmm.
ASSD's tribute to summon Stardust counts as a synchro summon, and then on resolution of that quick effect,
It's another
it
synchro
synchro
summon.
summons. So you draw two.
That's
It's just Pot of Greed.
this is so much better than Pot of Greed because you're gonna synchro summon pretty much. You're gonna go through what, like 12, 13 of your extra deck cards. You're probably drawing at least 6 or 7 cards off Hyper Librarian, and that's why
Yeah,
so much
and you don't
non-engine is.
necessarily
Yeah,
end on this card or have this in your mainline combo, but if you can get to it, like
you
in a
will.
weird scenario, sometimes it's just good to do that. Plus,
Yeah.
it's a 5, so you can just use this plus a Stardust Synchron that you've bumped the level up to go into a Baron at the end of your combo.
Yeah. And this card is why having so much non-engine in this deck is so important, because, like, let's say you do go through your whole combo line uninterrupted, right? You're ending on, you'll get a Majestic Star Dragon on their turn, you've got a Baron, you probably have a Dispotter or a Crystal Wing, and then you've just drawn like 5 or 6 cards, which is probably going to be an Ash Blossom in there. There's probably going to be an Imperm in there. There's probably going to be a DD Crow somewhere. So it is just an insane card. So thank the Lord it's at 1. But
There's a reason why I'm only playing 2 D barrier side. It's because I'll just draw into it.
that's fair. All right, so up next is the heart and soul of the deck, Junk Speeder. So if I remember this card correctly, I believe it was printed for Master Rule like 3 or Master Rule 4. Back when Synchro Monsters were nerfed, since they had to go into the EMZ, so they gave it this insanely powerful card. And then they just didn't errata it when Master Rule 5 came around. So go ahead and talk through the effect.
So if it's synchro summoned, you can special summon as many synchro monsters as possible. So it's optional to use the effect to special summon synchron monsters or synchron tuners. But if you choose to do that, you must special summon as many as possible. That's why we're of different levels. So that's why we're only running 4 levels so that we don't clog our board too much.
Gotcha.
Um, yeah, but it's just that's the only effect you use for it. It's got a hidden effect where you can make this card's attack become double its original attack until the end phase. Um,
They,
there's some other you cannot special summon monsters. Oh yeah, you can't special summon monsters that synchro monsters the turn you activate any of these effects. It's
yeah.
just when an attack is declared, you can double its attack. That never comes up, but I mean it's a cool effect.
Yeah, and I guess like notably, I would say that like the effect to double its attack can come up, right? Like let's say it's not something you should just forget about, right? Because like let's say you're up against like tier elements right now, and when you normal summon a guy, and then they flip the Shadal Schism to summon Winda, and then like you can, if you quick synchro with Rev Synchron into Junk Speeder, then you can just double its attack and beat over it. So like
Yeah,
it could come up reasonably.
yeah.
I
Yeah,
don't
it's
know how,
important to
but
keep
yeah.
note of, but it usually doesn't come up. But it importantly does not negate the effects, so you can summon out Stardust Synchron and then use this effect to search. Everyone thinks that, oh, it's gonna summon a bunch of cards from deck. It's gonna at least negate them, right?
No, why would
No,
it?
it's a good card.
Why would it? Like I said, this card was printed when you could only have one synchro monster on the field at a time if you didn't have a link monster. So why would it negate the effects, right? Like, let him get all the effects. They can only summon one synchro monster. So just
And the craziest thing about this card is this secret version is like a quarter.
yeah, yeah. I picked one up just like you as like additional trade bait, right? Like a guy wanted a card. The card I wanted was a little bit more expensive than the cards that, or yeah. So the cards he wanted from me were more expensive than the cards I wanted from him. So I just said, hey, throw in the junk speeder, and that was it. That was the end of it. You just get one. And anyway, all right. Up next, we have the synchro monster that I've seen way too much because I've been digging through so much bulk lately. Excel Synchron. So this just seems like a little bit of a laddering card, but go ahead and talk us through the effects.
Yeah, so this is usually what you're making with Jet and Trail, and because
Okay.
it's a Synchron, Trail will proc its effect to special summon a level 1 token.
Okay.
So usually what you do is you Jet plus Trail into this, and then you can't do this while you have Herald up, so this is why you will Synchro Summon into Crystal Wing, but its other effect, or its effect is to send one Synchron monster from deck to graveyard, and then you either increase or decrease its level by that. So usually you'll just make this, get the token, send a Stardust Synchron, make it a 9, go into Baron or Dispotter, whatever you need.
Oh, okay. I boost it both. Okay, that's crazy. And then during the main phase, quick effect, synchro summon. So I guess that could be useful for like dodging some forms of interaction.
Yeah,
Not.
and it doesn't lose the level modulation. So I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, yeah, it
What's.
doesn't lose it.
Yeah, yeah. So.
So there are some versions of the deck that will just end on the token plus the trail token plus this at a level 9,
Mhm.
so that they can quick synchro into Satellite Warrior, which will just blow up your opponent's entire field
That's very
and then
funny.
become a giant thing. So I mean, if you are playing a budget version, you can just play Satellite Warrior instead of like Dispotter or Baron.
Yeah, and Satellite Warrior came
You
out in Legendary Duels Season 3. It's like 10 cents for like
Yeah,
an
it's a
ultra
very cheap
rare.
card.
Yeah, yeah. So,
The thing about this deck is that you do absolutely need ASSD. You need Excel Synchro Stardust Dragon. That's the only like expensive card that you need for this deck. You can play without Dispotter and Baron, but yeah, you need ASSD. So
yeah,
you can build this deck sub $100 if you cut the revs, if you cut the Baron plus the Dispotter, and you just put in some other good stuff synchros. Um,
like I could
yeah,
very easily
it's
see like Draco Berserker and you can't really use Boral Load, but you could use like I don't know. What's another good one? Hot Red Dragon Archfiend Abyss would be like decent in this deck because you
it'd
could
be
go.
okay, but you can't make it super easily. Stardust Warrior, which is a very cheap card,
Mhm.
and just is I'm pretty sure it's just a summon negate. Yeah, during either player's turn, if your opponent would special summon a monster, you contribute this card, negate the summon, and if you do, destroy that monster. And then during the end phase, it comes back.
Yeah. So
Um, this card comes back.
yeah. So there's definitely cheaper options. And speaking of negate, last card is just Herald. Most
Yeah.
people, if you don't know what this card does, it not only has an effect when sent to graveyard off of Diviner the Herald, but it's also just a mini macrocosmos as well as a spell trap or monster negate. Or it's just an omni negate. And then, yeah, if it's sent to graveyard, you add a ritual monster or ritual spell, so you add the Cerevis. So essentially, Herald represents two negates because you negate and then you search Cerevis, which is another negate. So, really crazy card.
Yep. Yep. And there are versions of the deck that mainly the ones that are playing the Calamity Lock that instead of Cerevis, they're doing Souls stuff. So you can search out the Souls package, and
Yep.
then you get an extra draw plus um, you go into the Calamity Lock on your first turn,
Yeah.
which is pretty dang good.
Yeah, seems okay. Anyway, let's go ahead and get on to the side deck. So you kind of mentioned like what you're like why you're siding it, and I always like to tell people during deck profiles, don't take the side deck as like gospel. A lot of times, side decking is done for the meta game you're anticipating. So always side deck based on your meta game, not ours. But we have 3 Nibiru, 3 Gamciel, 1 Duster, 3 Cyclone, the 2 D barrier, and the 3 evenly matched. So uh, over half of these are just crossout targets that you don't want your opponent to resolve in games 2 and 3. Um, you mentioned that earlier.
Yeah, every single card in here is dual purpose. So yes, stuff like Nibiru, stuff like D Barrier, and Evenly are crossout targets, but
But
they're
they're
also
also
just
just
good
good.
cards.
Yeah, they're also just
Yeah,
really
like
good cards. Yeah.
against Albaz or Branded or anything like that or Tier, D Barrier kind of hurts a lot.
Hmm.
So I side in both of those if I'm facing a non-synchro deck that also doesn't link summon because this card was printed before that. But yeah, just it's a very solid card. I mean, Evenly is just good against literally every single deck except for maybe
Adignister.
exactly Agnister, yeah.
Yeah.
But no one's playing that because Marincess is just better.
Yeah. So
Cyclone is good against so many decks, like against Dinomorphia. If you banish the stuff, a lot of what they do is targeting in graveyard to copy effects. If you banish the trap card, they can't do that. Same thing with Labyrinth. They can't use Big Welcome's Engrave effect
if it's
if you
banished.
banish it.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
and then Duster's just a blowout.
Yeah, Gamma Seal is the answer to Pearly. Because as much as I love Book of Moon, I don't think you can warrant doing that right now. Yes, they get 6 draws, but at the same time, if it also just hits more decks than Book of Moon. You
Yeah.
can't just rely on playing against Pearly all the time, and that's why I decided to put this in instead of Book of Moon or Eclipse.
Also,
And then
like,
Nibiru is just good against everything.
yeah, and then like also notably, like Gamma Seal has some interesting usage, like just in the fact like if you draw multiple, right, going second, which can happen. It's happened multiple times to multiple people. You can special one to their field, you can special one to your field, and then you just have a free level 8 synchro material. So, not the worst.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah.
so, very decent, very tight, very cool deck. You mentioned like we've kind of gone through the budget options, a little bit. Obviously Rev Synchron and the adventure package isn't expensive anymore. Everything got reprinted in the
Yeah.
tins.
I think it's like $2 for a right now,
Yeah, like
which
Rite
is
is the most
hilarious.
expensive card. Fenrir is like 10 to 15, but like you mentioned, you don't have to play it. It's just a good
Like I said,
card.
another option is Reborn Tengu.
Yeah,
You really should only play either Tengu or Fenrir. I prefer Fenrir just because I don't like drawing more than one Tengu, and I like a really small deck list in terms of count. And I feel like if you're playing a larger adventure synchron deck, then Tengu is better. But I'm playing 42, so I like to have uh, more opportunities to not draw 2 Tengu.
all right, so yeah, pretty cool deck list. If you guys want to see like the budget versions that we were talking about, go ahead and leave a comment. If you really like synchros, leave a comment too. I know there's definitely some synchro believers out there in the audience. If you guys want to see combo videos, also comment down below. This is one of those decks where you can't have a straightforward combo, but if you want to get a sense of like what the deck does, how you play, all that kind of stuff, we can probably work something out like that. And if you just really enjoyed the video, make sure to like and subscribe. But that's all from us. We will catch y'all in the next one. Peace.